I'm not telling you anything new when I say the Titanic is the most talked about maritime disaster of all time. It's been over a century since the ship sank, and the interest in her today is still nothing short of incredible. People have dedicated their entire lives to simply studying the ship and everything that happened that fateful night on April 14th, 1912. Dozens upon dozens of books have been written. Several huge movies were made about the night of the sinking, including one that actually believed that they could raise the Titanic from 13,000 feet below, but the less said about that, the better. The disaster led to a great loss of life, with there being only enough lifeboats for half the people on board, and 1,200 people lost their lives when the ship went down, including some of the most well-known people in the world. We had John Jacob Astor, said to be the richest man in the world at the time. We had Isidore and Isabella Strauss, who refused to leave each other and bear life without the other, famously going back to their room and going down with the ship together. We had Benjamin Guggenheim, who openly expressed his desire to go down with the Titanic as a gentleman. These names were never forgotten, and rightly so for such bravery. However, two names that may have slipped under the radar were William Mintram and George McGough. Did these men go down fighting like Ben and JJ? Nope. Were they rich beyond their wildest dreams? Absolutely not. So what makes these men so relevant? Well, William and George were wrongdoers. Pretty bad wrongdoers. They were actually convicted killers, and not only managed to get on board the Titanic with such public backgrounds, but they both got jobs aboard the ship too, and even helped people on the night of the sinking. How did this come about? Here's their story. It's not every day that convicted killers get jobs on the grandest ship in the world, allowing them to be in close vicinity to some of the world's most important people who are travelling on board the Titanic. But get jobs William and George did, and a good job they did. So who are they? Who did they kill? Were they in prison? Who were these men? Let's answer all those questions. Born in the month of March 1866, the exact day unknown to the records, William Mintram was a Southampton resident his whole life, and he took to drinking alcohol from a very young age, regularly drinking himself to the point of intoxication, or so unconfirmed reports have stated. William married a 17-year-old woman by the name of Eliza Mary Rose Veal, and the two had 5 children between them. My guess is that they had their quarrels like most married couples, but they made it to their 15th wedding anniversary before things took a very dark turn. Now, I mentioned a few moments ago that William liked alcohol, too much of it, and regularly spent his wages on it. When his wife pawned their son's boots for money, William, drunk and furious at the news, flew into a rage as he argued with his wife. He stabbed her in the back, killing her. He was arrested and he stood trial. William claimed he had no memory of the incident and appeared to be very remorseful. The sentence for murder at the time was death by hanging, which William should have gotten. However, due to the fact that he had 5 children under the age of 18, who he provided for, the judge convicted him of manslaughter and he served 3 years of a given 12. The judge, most likely knowing that sending 5 children into an orphanage would end up costing the state more money in the long run, had William hanged for his crime. That was it. He served his time and was released in 1905, returning to his job as a fireman for a shipping company, a job he worked at from a very young age. His experience as a fireman landed him a job in the bunkers of the Titanic, where he worked in blistering heat to propel the ship towards its destination. Despite his recorded conviction of murdering his wife, William was an official Titanic employee. His fellow convict George McGough has a slightly different story than William, and his troubles began 2 years earlier in 1900, He didn't stab his wife in the back anyway, that's what I mean. George was born in Duncannon, County Wexford, Ireland in 1875. An Irishman like myself. Not doing the Irish people proud, George, but this is your story, not mine. So let's continue. Gough was a seaman from a very young age. Now, it's not known or stated how he got his start at sea, but he consistently lied about his age while at sea, informing his crew he was 27, when in fact he was actually 36. Why he lied about his age is unknown. It was during employment aboard the collier Rustington, while it was anchored off the Santos coast in Brazil, where George committed the crime that landed him in a Southampton prison. George engaged in a drink-fueled fight with fellow shipmate John Dwyer. During the altercation, George shoved Dwyer over a hatchway, causing him to fall down it, smashing his head open on the timbers 26 feet below, killing him instantly. Gough was immediately placed under arrest before being discharged after 3 days and taken by the British consul back to Southampton port aboard the Magdalena, the ship's home port. Standing trial, the Crown sentenced Gough to 15 months hard labour in prison for manslaughter, as the judge declared that evidence of intent to kill was not present. Upon his release towards the latter end of 1901, George returned to sea under various aliases before landing his own job on the Titanic as a deckman in 1912, 11 years after his release. The Titanic now had 2 convicted killers aboard as she began her maiden voyage to New York. How were these men even considered for employment? Well, according to George himself, the White Star Line didn't pay much attention to the lower ranked employees, their backgrounds or who they were, and quickly hired men with any sea experience. He also stated that White Star Line treated their workers as if they were prisoners anyway. With it being over a decade since both men's convictions, it's no surprise that their time on Titanic went without incident, William slaving away in the depths of the ship, while George worked up on the decks within an arm's length of passengers. On the night of the sinking, William was last reported helping the boiler room workers escape the fate of the watertight doors, but never surfaced himself or was seen up on deck again. George, on the other hand, had a more fortunate fate, as he was part of the crew who were saved in the lifeboats. He was reported as aiding as many as he could into lifeboats before finally getting a spot in one himself. He survived the sinking and went on to serve aboard the Red Star Lapland in 1920. He died at the age of 64 on May 6, 1940. There you have it, everyone. That is the story of the 2 convicted killers who served aboard the Titanic. One perished with the ship, one survived and lived to old age. If you knew the story of these 2 men, well, that makes you a know-it-all. And if you didn't, well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out some of my other videos on the channel, and please hit the subscribe button to help my channel grow. Thanks again for watching.